generally on issues related to human rights. And I got started, I think, about 20 years ago with Dr. Neelan Tiruchelvam, who was assassinated in 1999. And he was, in a way, I suppose, the person who I looked up to at the time, because the values he espoused and the way he tried to build a community of people, particularly young people, who were committed to working on human rights and trying to address the inequalities in society and work for social justice, particularly for marginalized communities. So from there, I went on to be a legal advisor to the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Thereafter, in 2015, I was appointed as a member of the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka. And now I am a fellow of the Open Society Foundations, where I'm doing research to understand why is it that reform efforts have failed in Sri Lanka. So even women can be marginalized, because in our community we find women are subject to discrimination, whether it's within the police department, whether it's in the public service, whether it's in parliament, or whether it's women-headed households. Or war-affected women in the north and the east. So marginalized, any of them and all of them can be marginalized, or even a woman seeking, a victim of domestic violence seeking assistance. The kind of work I do can be advocating for legal change, or supporting women's organizations lobby at the community level for something, or getting them legal assistance for something, helping them draft a document, doing research, or speaking about the problems that they face, speaking publicly about it. So when I was in the Human Rights Commission, we had a subcommittee with members of the LGBTIQ community to advise the Commission on what the Commission should do. So for instance, like repealing Section 365 and 365A. And also trying to help transgender persons getting the certificate so that they can, the gender certificate, so they can change the sex in their personal documentation. The biggest challenge in our country, and this is actually in many other countries, but particularly in our country, is that when you work on human rights, it means you have to be critical of the government. You have to challenge the government. You have to hold the government accountable. The moment you do that, then what happens? The government gets upset. Because in South Asia, and this is a sickness to South Asia actually, is that, and particularly Sri Lanka, we do not understand, I feel we have not internalized democratic values. We believe democracy is just casting your vote. For civil society organizations, this is once again something that we have openly said, and I have openly said. It's also NGOs or civil society organizations once again are looked upon with suspicion and as enemies, which means you're subject to surveillance or intimidation, harassment, law they're going to bring to regulate NGOs. And no one says that if someone is committing fraud, you need to let them get away with it. But there are enough laws in our country to curb such activities, more than enough. We don't need new laws for that. So organizations clearly are very concerned about this, because they are afraid that their freedom of association and expression will be curtailed, and they will not be able to work on issues that are considered controversial. Where reforms are concerned, there is, particularly in societies like Sri Lanka, which patronage driven, and where I think there are still feudal elements that exist in our society, and we function a certain way. We don't always appreciate or adhere to systems or processes. The other thing is, while there are political factors, there's social factors, all those things that have an impact on how successful the reform might be. But I think what happens is people look at reform as a very technical legal thing. So they think all that they need to do is pass a law and voila, everything will fall into place. But it does not, because those other factors come into play. And there are also informal factors and relationships that might influence the attempts at reform, which once again are not taken into account. When I was in the Human Rights Commission, the Commission also conducted awareness raising for state officials. So that also means for the police, or for the Grama Sevakas, or for the Department of Registrar General, to make them aware also of their duties under the Constitution of Sri Lanka. And at the same time, we also conduct, I'm in part of many programs conducted by civil society to raise awareness, now particularly, for instance, about domestic violence. But raising awareness doesn't work. I'll give you a personal example. Just yesterday, I was involved in trying to get protection for two women. One in Colombo, one Trinco, both horrific cases of domestic violence. It was extremely difficult, right? And I am someone who could say, I know what to do, I have resources in the sense of I know people, whatnot. Even then, it was extremely difficult. The police, for instance, don't take the complaint seriously. They don't take all the facts that was stated, and therefore they miscategorize the complaint as a minor offense, even though there was severe violence that was used. Then since it's a minor offense, they don't take it seriously. They don't go looking for the man. The man continues to threaten the woman. So we have to try multiple means through the Human Rights Commission. Then a lawyer has to visit the police station. I have to talk to to talk to the OIC to put pressure to arrest the man, because the woman, her mother, and her child, 3-year-old child, are petrified, right? So yes, our systems really don't work. They are, and I would not advise any woman to go to a police station alone. I always say, take a lawyer, not just in terms of, you can be harassed or anything like that, but just you would not understand the process. So when you write the complaint, you might not ask them that you want to read it to make sure everything is in there. Or it might be written in a language you don't understand. So therefore we can raise awareness of women in terms of violence, but that's not going to solve much, because when they go seeking remedies, the structures are still very patriarchal, sexist, misogynist, and hostile to them. In Sri Lankan prisons, you find that our prisons are overcrowded. That is one of our biggest problems. And the conditions there are also quite appalling. So the buildings are crumbling. People don't have access to water. They have difficulty accessing medical care. And one of the reasons for the overcrowding is that many of the people in prison don't actually need to be in prison. A large majority of them are there because they could not pay fines, and fines as little as even like 2,000 or 3,000 rupees. Others are there because they were not given bail. Now, according to our law, bail is something that is the rule rather than the exception. But in practice, we find that most people are remanded and not given bail, and very few are. So these are some of the reasons why our prisons are overcrowded. Therefore, I think we must try to find ways of ensuring people that society to prison pipeline is what we must stop, because sending people to prison does not reduce crime and does not make us safer. Well, I think, to be honest, for most civil society organizations, particularly organizations in the North and the East, it is to survive. For most organizations now, civil society organizations, it's about survival. We want to survive, to be able to serve the communities where there is need. Well, I think in Sri Lanka, we find the public, and this I even tell, maybe even family members and friends, is that people are armchair critics, and they are critical of everything. They complain that processes, systems, and institutions don't work, but they also contribute to its dysfunctionality. They don't follow process. If they can find someone they know to jump the queue, they will. If they can bribe someone to do something, they will. So therefore, I think you have to realize that you also have a civic duty, certain responsibilities, if we want society to be fixed. The other thing is, of course, as I said, about accountability. And people think when you say accountability, the only thing they can think of is wartime violations. Actually, no. Accountability is what every citizen does every day in holding, whether it's the Grama Sevaka or the divisional secretary or the district secretary or the MP or the prime minister or the president accountable. That is accountability. That is how you ensure there is no impunity from the bottom right up to the top. So I think we need to fix our education system, and we do need to teach children about civics. What is your civic responsibility? What does it mean to be a citizen? What does democracy mean, and what role do you have to play in democracy? So I think those are the things. And of course, since this is also International Women's Day, I think most importantly, if we want to change the sexism and patriarchy and misogyny, it starts at home. How people bring up their children, what they teach their girl child versus the boy child, the rights and freedoms they give one versus the other. And then when you go to school, the different kind of prejudices and stereotypes that are fed to you, also through the textbooks. So I think once again, we keep coming back to society. You can say, oh my God, look who's in parliament, and complain about it, but they came from our society and you guys voted them in. So I think the responsibility also lies with us to hold them accountable.